What's up, roadside history fans? Thanks for following my channel and thanks for liking and sharing my page. Today we're in upstate New York, driving along the interstate. We're on our way to a fantastic historical marker that has a significant amount of history to the United States and to this region as well. We're on our way to take you to the Erie Canal. We want to show you what the canal looks like. We want to show you what the locks look like and how it works. We also want to tell you why the canal was important, how it was built, who built it, and what it did for the state of New York as well as the country as a whole. So thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. The Erie Canal was one of the I don't know about the brainchild, but it was one of the things that DeWitt Clinton, who was a senator in the state of New York and also served as a legislator, he was a huge proponent for the canal and for building it because he wanted New York City to become the Empire State. And really, the canal helped New York become that. It took about $7 million to complete the canal, and it took about 8 years worth of labor. And you can imagine, the canal was built through forests, through swamps, over aqueducts. You had to fell trees, you had to pull stumps, you had to basically build this thing, and it was before we have the modern machinery that we have today. But the canal was completed, and it would open up Western migration and expansion. It would also drop the price of goods and services tremendously. For example, it would cost, it took about 90%, it would drop costs about 90% to get goods to market. If you were an overland traveler, it might take you 5 days to go from, say, Albany to Buffalo on the canal, where 5 days on the canal, where maybe it took 5 weeks by a stagecoach and wagon. Time was money, and building the canal made it possible so that time reduced and profits grew, whereas costs decreased. This is the Erie Canal. That is one of the locks that you're looking at right there. There is some of the water. You'll notice the elevation in the water is considerably lower over here than it is up here. And of course, it works the same way downriver. Let me explain to you why. This is lock 29. And let me explain to you how this works. The elevation of the river is different here than it is downriver there. And in order to get boats to be able to maneuver through the canal, but you'd come in from that end down there, and as you came in, as the lock opened, the ship would come in, or the boat, it would come in, they would then flood this area to raise the water level, which would then lift the boat. They would open the next lock, and the boat would then travel on to where it needs to go. In fact, let me show you some of this area here. It's truly remarkable, the engineering that took place in order to build this thing. Just the sheer magnitude of clearing forests and pulling the stumps and the amount of work that would have gone into it. You can see lock 29 as it says right there. But the amount of work that went into building something like this, and what it did was incredible. In fact, DeWitt Clinton, when he would build the canal and would really push for the canal, it would be called Clinton's Big Ditch or Clinton's Folly, because people thought, this is ridiculous. Why are we spending this kind of money? But Clinton and others had a vision on what this canal could do for the United States. Not only did it improve transportation, I mean, I already mentioned to you that it would take X number of weeks to go by covered wagon train to get from point A to point B, but it would also improve the moving of goods and services in a way that would really increase the economy of New York City and make New York the major seaport in the United States of America. What's interesting is the canal goes from the Hudson River all the way up to the Great Lakes region, Lake Erie. Hence, that's why it's called the Erie Canal. It's an incredible masterpiece. When they built the Erie Canal, they built it in sections, generally 15 miles or so at a section. The first section was Rome, New York, to I believe it was Utica. Anyway, they would continue to build section after section after section for many, many years. I mentioned that it took 8 years for completion, but I also want to tell you the historical significance and what the canal did when it was built. Now you had people, because you could reach the interior of the United States, or at least the Great Lakes region, now that you could reach these areas without having to go through the Appalachian Mountains, without having to go over these different areas that were hostile in some places, now it allowed for social movements to happen. For example, you might get on the canal in Rochester and take with you the Rochester newspaper, and you might end up in, I don't know, near Syracuse. Now you've got the ideas of Rochester impressing the people in this area, and you might get on the canal in Syracuse and head a different direction, and you might have a newspaper with you, and those ideas and those papers are spreading from town to town. It was really, you know, probably one of the more famous stops along the canal is Seneca Falls. And you might think, well, Seneca Falls, what in the heck does Seneca Falls have to do with anything? Well, if you remember right, the women's suffrage movement was a big deal, as was the women's temperance movement. And in Seneca Falls, there was a meeting that was held there, that would be a convention that was held there, that would be huge for women's suffrage. People like Elizabeth Cady Stanton were involved in that. And why Seneca Falls? Well, Seneca Falls was a stop along the Erie Canal, and it would be a place where ideas could come in and could be spread out. Social movements, religious movements spread because so many individuals that came in brought with them new ideas. Basically, it was a travel route. Picture your own hometown. If your own hometown has a large tourist population, people from all over the country or the world are bringing their ideas to your community. And when they bring them to your community, you're meeting new people, you're developing new ideas, new cultures, new information, and it really starts to spread and change the dynamics of your community. The Erie Canal was just that. This was the major transportation route for this part of the country. And as mentioned, it opened up so much to the Great Lakes region. You know, in the 1790s, before the canal was built, we had the Whiskey Rebellion. And you probably know a little bit about the Whiskey Rebellion, where farmers revolted on a tax on whiskey. It took so long for farmers to get their wheat to market that oftentimes the wheat was no good. So the side way around that was, well, let's make whiskey and sell our whiskey. And of course, the government got involved, as they always do, and decided to tax that whiskey. And that tax on whiskey infuriated farmers. Really, the issue was, the underlying issue, I suppose, is they couldn't get their product to market fast enough. The Erie Canal allowed for product to get to market faster. I guess one of the things you could compare the Erie Canal to today would be the information superhighway, because this was the superhighway of its time. I can't imagine getting on board a crowded wagon train to travel and spend weeks and weeks and weeks in the elements traveling. Can't imagine. The Erie Canal just really opened that up and made it better. It made travel much safer. It made travel much quicker, and just really opened up expansion into the Great Lakes region of the United States. It's funny that so many thought this was a folly and a disaster that was going to begin, when it's turned out to be one of the great American engineering feats of all time. Behind me, Lock 29 is opening up. You're going to get to see how the canal works as a boat comes in and they raise the water level. Let me show you. You can see the lock is opening up. It's level with the river there. Of course, as you get further upriver, you can see the river is higher. But as he opens this lock, a ship will come in and they'll begin to flood it. I'm here at Lock 29 with Mitch. Mitch works for the New York Canal System, and he was just here opening the lock, and He's going to tell us a little bit more about the locks and the whole canal system here in New York.
So we're in Palmyra Lock 29. We're a 16-foot lift. We're number 29. There's 57 concrete locks right now. We're a DC mechanical lock. We run on 240 volt direct current, and it's all mechanical driven. It's still the original from about 100 plus years ago, pre-World War I.
You said everything here was American made.
Yep. So everything was made was it post-industrial revolution. This was Teddy Roosevelt precursor project to his Panama Canal project. At any point along this canal system, there's 528 miles combined total of canals. We run 4 primary canals in this state. The Champlain Canal, which takes you from Montreal to New York City up the Hudson and Lake Champlain. The Erie Canal, which is roughly, I think, 365 miles from Buffalo to Albany. And then we have the Oswego Canal, which connects Syracuse to Lake Ontario. Then we have the Cuba-Seneca canals, which connect the Finger Lakes. And they're all tied in together. And you can pretty much put a boat in at any point along this route and go anywhere in the entire world. We waived all tolls. We used to have to charge fees to use it, and that actually turned out to be pretty counterproductive. So the New York Power Authority took over and they waived the fees. Bicentennial promoted it, and now it's seen exceptional growth every year since.
Oh, that's incredible. I understand that when it was built, when the Erie Canal was built, it cost about $8 million. And the first year that it was open, the tolls collected enough money to fund and pay itself off. So it turns out DeWitt Clinton knew what he was doing when he dug the canal.
And it's ironic because DeWitt Clinton was the governor of New York State at the time. And it's all, like I said, it's American made. The stuff does not break. It lasts, it's meant to last the toll of time, basically. Aaron.
So one of the things about the Erie Canal is, how do the locks get flooded? And we're going to get a brief lesson here on how the locks flood, because there's a lot of people who think there are pumps that just pump water in. That's not actually true. Go ahead and tell us how that works.
So it's all what they call gravity fed. Water's sole purpose is to seek to achieve its own level. So the way that it goes is, on the upper side of the gates we have trash rack water intakes, and they're twice the width of the tunnels. And what they do is they create a current. Once you lift the valves up, the water will flow in and it'll naturally seek its own level. So it comes into the lock chamber and it fills up to meet the upper level. And once it's level, the boat will be on the same level as the upper river, and then you can run the gates open and close. And the same process in reverse to dump the lock or let the boats out. So I would have to walk down here, open up these valves, and the water would be shut off at the top, and the water in the chamber will backfeed through the tunnels and come out around the gates and shoot out in the lower river. And once the lower river and the lock meet the same level, I can run the gates open and close.
Awesome. So
let the boats in and out.
So upriver here, you open where the water's higher, you open the valves, the water just flows down, gravity
naturally.
And then once the boat passes through the lock, you close the doors,
close the valves,
and then close the valves and do the same thing, and it goes down that way. Here we are. You can see the boat coming in behind me. It's coming into the first lock, and it will be raised up and then move on to the next area. You can see the size of the boat that's coming in. And apparently the Erie Canal is used to move people and goods still to this day all over the world. As Mitch, who's the superintendent here, was telling us, you can start the canal. People come from Europe, they take the canal all the way in, they can get down to the Gulf of Mexico through the canal system. Anyway, just want to show you this boat as it's coming into the lock. The boat behind me's home base is Marathon, Florida. So that gives you an idea of how far these people have traveled, maybe up the Atlantic seaboard and then in through the different canal systems throughout the state of New York. What's going to happen now is Mitch, the engineer, is going to close the lock, and once he closes the lock, then again they'll lift the valves, which will then let the water from upriver just follow the natural flow of gravity down into the lock and then raise the boat based on the concept of buoyancy. But now I'm going to take you up to the next lock as they begin to flood it and raise the boat. As you can see, the water level is raising right now. The The dirty area that you see in front of you is where the valves are letting the new water come in from right up here. This water is raising up. It's probably gone up about a foot so far, and it's taken maybe, I don't know, 25, 30 seconds or so. Hasn't been very long, but anyway, we'll let you continue to watch as this boat is lifted up to the canal. As you can see, the water level has now been raised inside of the lock, and the lock gates are being opened, and the vessel is going to be able to work itself right out. You can see the locks behind it from where it just came from. Essentially how this works is it's a waterway elevator. The water is at one level, the boat comes in, they close the gates, they flood it, they lift the boat, it goes to the next area. Then it goes in the next lock, they flood it, they lift it up, and it goes to the next area. You can see the ship now. The boat has it's been lifted up, and now it's about to move through this portion of Lock 29 here at the Erie Canal. Quite an incredible accomplishment, a marvel in engineering, no doubt. And just the sheer magnitude of this, it's a 363-mile canal from the Hudson River to Lake Erie. The engineering is amazing, and you can imagine going back to 1817 all through 1825 while they were building this. It was a modern marvel to be able to do it. It's an incredible piece of engineering. They're closing the lock behind me now. As you can see, the boat has traveled through, and then what they're going to do is they're going to open the lock down there so that they can drain the water out back to the lower river level.